All right, everybody, thanks so much for joining in this morning, and I'm going to officially call the subcommittee meeting for the Public Outreach and Interpretation of the Civil War Historical Commission to order. So when I call your name, please say present. Tom Cartwright is absent. Sam Gant.
Present.
Hi, Sammy.
Sam Huffman. I thought I saw Sam.
I think you're on mute, Sam.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can.
Present.
Thank you. Eric Jacobson. Absent, okay. Pam Lewis.
Here. Present.
Yay. Alma McLemore.
Present.
Scott Speedy.
Present.
How are you, Scott?
I'm well. I'm well.
Good. Tim Stillings. Amanda said he would be absent. And then Rachel Finch. I am here. All right, now I do need to read the resolutions. And then we will need someone to make a motion and second. We entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2020-102, a resolution declaring that the Public Outreach Interpretation Subcommittee of the Civil War Historical Commission shall meet on June 11th, 2020, and conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location, because it is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak.
So moved.
Second, Pam Lewis.
And Rachel, you don't have to name everyone who's absent. You can go ahead and skip them.
We can just skip them? Okay. So Sam Gant. All right, so all in favor, I'm going to call your name and then just please say yes or no for the resolution. Sam Gant. I think he's on mute.
Saw his mouth move. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sam Gant, did you say yes? Thank you. Alma McLemore.
Yes.
Scott Speedy.
Yes.
And Rachel Finch, yes.
We got Sam Huffman, right?
Yes, Sam Huffman actually made the
Yes.
motion
Oh, okay.
and Pam seconded.
Okay. We still need them to vote though.
They do need to vote. Okay, so Sam, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
And Pam,
Yes.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Kelly.
Announcement for limited access, and this is one more thing that I'll read. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, this meeting will be a virtual meeting. The public may call 615-550-8420 to listen to the meeting and make comments during any public comment period. The public may also email comments to planningintake@franklintn.gov to be read aloud during the meeting. Emailed comments will be accepted until 1 hour prior to the meeting. The meeting video will be available for public viewing 24 hours following the meeting on the City of Franklin YouTube account. All right, now we can get on to discussion of Historic Parks audio tour.
All right. Well, I talked to Rachel briefly following the last meeting of the full commission in May, and where we kind of left off on some of our notes is that Tim had volunteered to transcribe a couple of our meeting non-transcribed tour stops that were non-city-owned stops, in addition to the ones that Alderman Speedy had already transcribed for us. So we appreciate that. Alderman Speedy and Tim, Rachel has started writing a stop for the Masonic Hall because we had all previously talked about the slots that we had vacant in the tour. Guide by Cell has a number of slots available to us and identified 3 vacant slots. So that's 6 vacant slots. And our protocol is to have both English and Spanish language tour availability for each stop that we provide. So that would allow for 3 additional stops on our tour. So we decided as a subcommittee that we would like to suggest to the full commission and then obviously to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen that we add 3 additional stops to the full tour. And one of the stops that was suggested by the commission would be the Masonic Hall. So Rachel's already started working on that on behalf of the Masonic Hall as the Masonic Hall representative to the commission. I would like today, if we could, to go ahead and determine what those other 2 stops should be as recommendations to the full commission, as well as determining who might take on kind of adopting specific stops on the tour and listening to them and making suggestions on what those edits should be. Now, I understand that not everyone is a historian to the level of feeling comfortable making editorial comments on transcriptions or on, tour content. And I certainly understand that, and I don't think that I personally would feel comfortable doing that on every stop myself. The process that I foresee with this is, as a citizen listening to a stop, there are certain things that you're going to be interested in naturally as you visit the site or you listen remotely to learn more about the site. And as somebody that has a little bit more experience in knowing what those sites are about, just kind of identifying whether or not those stops actually take those interest points into account very well and succinctly, and just kind of making notes on where you think things go very well, where they aren't going very well, what could be added, maybe what could be taken out. And then we can work with historians that have the content background for those specific places after that to kind of finesse those stops to maybe add in or remove content as needed in order to address the comments that you make initially. That's just my thought moving forward. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Amanda, what is the time, what's the good time that, as far as number of minutes or whatever, should the stops be? I know every one of them won't have the same level of, the same time frame or whatever, but what's a good number that you recommend based on people's listening patience?
Well, I'm not sure I have a great answer for that. I do know that as a rule, our television spots only go 5 or so minutes before commercial breaks. So perhaps 5 minutes might be a good a length of time before you might lose interest. I know that some of our stops are a little longer than that, and some need to be because of the content. And the reason that we have the stops, of course, is to provide some information to folks where we can't provide staffing in order to do that. So there may be a need to do that. I think there are things that we can do to be creative in how we break up content or provide breaks in the stops in order to make them more palatable. For example, there's 2 stops at Toussaint L'Ouverture, correct, Scott? There's 2 stops there.
Correct, yeah.
And one is significantly longer than the other. So maybe it's how we break up those stops so that they're a little bit more even in content, or length, for example.
Mhm.
And I'm sure he has a lot of thought on that, having listened and transcribed those.
Mhm. Well, that
Most
was
of
the
our
job.
most successful stops are the shorter ones, absolutely. When you go look at the guide by cell statistical analyses, they break up by which ones are listened to the most and which ones are listened to in completion the most. We have obviously the stops that are most popular, and the ones with the most like percentage of completeness are the ones that are kind of falling in that sweet spot between 3 and 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yes, I mentioned this before, but I think we should announce at the very beginning how long this message lasts 4 minutes. And you set expectations so they don't start thinking, is this ever going to end?
No,
Well-
Sam, I agree with you. Perhaps we should let people know how long each stop could
Good
be.
point. Good
Yes.
point.
That is a very valid point.
Well, it's a basic marketing technique is you always set the customer's expectation early on.
Mhm.
And it can be an expectation about anything, but how long you're going to pester him is one thing.
Right.
Yeah, the two cemetery tours, one is 1320 and the other one was 2239.
Right.
Oh, wow. See,
Very
Wow.
long.
that's
And
very
again, part of the reason for that is there's no opportunity elsewhere to get that information. So that might be something that we as a subcommittee make recommendations to for the full commission to consider. Maybe there's another way we can get that information out there. Refer people within the audio tour to another resource that's online or
Mhm.
to another resource elsewhere. Are there interpretive panels at another site that may be able to give some of that information?
Can you
Yeah.
transfer it to like another website? Like, for example, I'm just asking, this may sound dumb, but like information about the like the Tucson Love Tour, could you transfer it like to the African American Heritage Society website? I mean, is it possible to do stuff like that?
There's no dumb questions when it comes to stuff like this, and that is totally possible. Absolutely possible. We want to be able to get our citizens out there and see the opportunities and different resources we have available in our community. The city is hosting this for some of our city-owned sites, but also to show people and showcase what we have here in our community. So, we want people to know about the African American Heritage Society and see what it has to offer and the resources it has available through the Macklemore House and elsewhere. So I think that'd be excellent. And plus that makes it more exciting than sitting and listening to a tour that is 34 minutes, 35 minutes long in length total.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be very visually uninteresting if someone's just sitting there listening on the phone.
Right.
And it doesn't engage all the different types of learners, tactile learners, visual learners.
And they could still look at it at their leisure on the website. And then, because sometimes when you break things up, I mean, it's a lot easier. I mean, nobody's got that much time. I mean, we should have it now, but I find that, I mean, there's more now because so much is, I don't know. I don't even want to talk about that, but we have less time, it seems like. I've been having meetings every day and boy, yes.
Oh, I think that's an excellent point. Getting people interested, whetting their palate and sending them to other resources that can broaden the breadth of what there is to offer here in our community. This is for our citizens and our tourists. And so I'm certain, unfortunately, there are a lot of people that live here in Franklin that don't know about the African American Heritage Society and that it manages the Macklemore House and that this Macklemore House is a jewel of a resource here in our community and what it means to the history of Franklin. So let people know about it in any way that we can do that. I think that's fantastic. I'm going to write that down as an idea.
And Amanda, this is Rachel. Is there a way for just the audio tour portion of that, if we were to go through it and maybe edit the content, there might be a way to edit the content to still say the same thing, just without perhaps so many ways of saying it that might be within the audio content. I haven't listened to it in quite some time, but we may be able to condense some of the information into a more concise format, so Toussaint's tours are not quite so long.
So
And
I
then-
hadn't listened.
I'm not
I
sure.
hadn't listened. I'm sorry.
So you mean like you, instead of having someone re-record it, just try to condense the existing audio files?
No, I think we should re-record it. But I'm just saying maybe there's a way from the transcription that Scott so graciously did for us to go through and kind of edit the content and see where we could make some concise changes.
Oh, absolutely. That's
Um,
what I'm suggesting we do, and maybe
Yeah.
there's somebody that would want to take that on for that particular cemetery.
And then to Alma's point, you know, put up additional information beyond just the audio tour of Toussaint's history on the Macklemore website. Like we could maybe have a tab or something there where there'd be more information for people to go find and read.
Right, definitely.
And we could put images and things like that.
Mhm.
And since the work has already been done, I mean, I know we're talking about redoing it, but so, and I have to give Scott, appreciate Scott going through all those. I mean, I haven't listened to the Toussaint, and it's been a while, but I remember, is that the same one that Eddie George and a bunch of them are on? I think, was Eddie George on that one?
Not sure. When they did tell me who was reading, I definitely put the names down. I think I just scanned it. I think there's maybe 12 to 13 different graves that they kind of go in depth on. I mean, it's great information, but you know, I think for somebody doing a 1-day tour of Franklin, it's too much. But if someone said, I want to do a 3-day tour and I really want to dive into it, I'd hate to lose any of that information.
Yeah, especially if we have celebrities that have already done it. You're not going to, probably get them again.
Right. Yeah, we do have some on there, Eddie George, and then of course we have our president,
Thelma.
Tommy Murdoch, that was a
Who passed.
community leader and did a lot in the community. He's on there. But anyway.
Is Kev Moe on there?
No, I don't. It's
No,
another
okay.
guy that was from Nashville. He's a radio, TV announcer. I
Okay.
forgot his name.
Okay. Well, I think it's a great idea to push them to direct them to African American heritage. And you're right, Rachel's right too with the images. It just, it drives more traffic and awareness to African American heritage and allows people to dive deeper if they want to. And the other thing is correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, isn't there only just one marker for Toussaint? So maybe there could be some additional interpretive panels put up as well down the road.
I think, Amanda, there is only the
one marker when
wayside
you come in,
marker.
right?
Yeah, I think it's the wayside marker, Pam.
That's it. The one that's on Del Rio?
Yes.
That's it, I think. So down the road, there could be some additional panels erected too, potentially, that would, bring people into the cemetery and give them additional information.
Definitely. So is there anyone that has interest in looking at the transcription that Scott put together and maybe making some editorial comments on that? I know that's a big one. So I would, I know that one might be a little tough. And you don't have to make, comments for additional content to be added necessarily. It's more like editorial comments at this point that we can start making baby steps moving forward.
Okay. I'll be one of the people and I'll be part of it. We're going to have to narrow 20. We're going to narrow 22 minutes and 11. We're going to have to narrow down that to about 5 minutes. Wow.
Well, and that maybe that's where we try to figure out, does that make sense for this particular one? Or maybe we take some of that audio content and we host it on the another site somewhere else. We host
We
it
could
on the
direct them.
website. We refer people, hey, if you want to hear Eddie George and Papa Murdoch talk a little bit more about this, go to the city's website here, or go
Right,
to the African American Heritage
right,
Society
right.
site here. You know,
Yeah.
there's different ways we can handle that, but those, I kind of want to hear from you guys on what you think
Yeah.
about that after you kind of listen to it and read the notes as you go along.
Okay, well, after, if we can, once we condense it down, if we can refer them
Mm-hmm.
to the other links or websites where that information will still be captured, will still be there, I
Mhm.
think that would be a good thing.
We don't
You
lose
don't
their
want to lose it.
voices. We don't lose that content. You know, I know
Right.
there's a lot of
Right.
concern, especially with Tommy and Jim Hayes for the Harlansdale site. We don't want to lose that, institutional knowledge
Mm-mm.
and that historical record of those folks.
No.
Yeah,
I'll be happy to take a look.
Yeah, I was
I'm sorry,
gonna say,
go
yeah,
ahead.
it's Tommy Murdoch, Thelma Battle, Hewitt Sawyer. I'd hate to lose his voice. Tom Randall, Monique from the city, Dan Alexander, Dan Pitts. Oh, Melinda Doolittle. I guess at some point in time she was famous.
Oh,
And yeah,
Eddie George, and Eddie George on there?
I don't remember Eddie George on this one.
I
Yeah.
thought he was. He was on. Yeah, he's on one of them.
Okay.
But see, all of those people, some have made significant contributions. Well, most of them to African American history in Williamson County, or to the African American culture and stuff like that. So I think it's so important that we really, really do try to save that and direct it to another website if we're not able to have
Yeah.
all
And
of
Chris
the,
Williamson is on there too, and he was part of the
Yeah.
Fuller story.
yeah.
as was Mr. Sawyer.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a historical tour. I mean, it's got a lot of people on there that really are crucial to the history of African American history in Williamson County.
So Miss Alma said that she would take on one part of it. Is anyone else interested in working on that?
I think Pam said too. I think
Pam
I heard
said
Pam
that
say.
she would. And Amanda, I'm happy to help too.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
Send some to me. I'll take a look at them.
Okay, well,
Good.
we got plenty to go around.
We got a
guys.
great team.
There's plenty.
We're gonna go through the whole stop today, and I know we have a couple of folks that aren't with us, so we'll save some for Tim. And I'm gonna try to work with Eric and Tom Cartwright to see if they might be able to help with a few choice ones as well. But I'll work with Rachel on that one and maybe get your suggestions too on what those could be. But
Okay.
we have a whole slate of them. I'm gonna share the screen right now and show you the full tour. All right, Kelly's working on that so I can share it. Okay. All right, so can everyone see the tour stops?
Yes.
Okay, so if there are faces in the way of the tour stops, you can grab the black bar above the top face that you see and just drag it over. Okay, so we have these 15. Everything down at the bottom underneath number 11 is a non-city site that we've added since the initial since the initial rendition, and Leadership Franklin classes have added those 12 through 15. That's why we don't have those transcriptions as readily available, and that's why you guys have been working on those. So what we'd like to do is evaluate all of these. And so, well, it's nice of you all to volunteer for the Toussaint one. We've got plenty to go around. So don't worry about having to jump in all at one time. So we all can certainly look at all of them if you'd like to, or kind of, adopt a couple and go through those. I know that, Dr. Gant and Sam Huffman have, specific knowledge on some of these Civil War sites, and they may have interest in, a couple of these over some of the others. So I would love to hear your thoughts on, if there's any of these that you want to listen to in particular, so that we can give some comments and move forward.
This is Sam Gant. I would have to look at it more closely, but I'd be glad to work with any of you that you wish.
Okay, well, we have the overview of the Battle of Franklin, Winstead Hill, the assault on the Cotton Gin, and I think that, you know, that one could probably be revised to include a lot more about like the reclamation of the Carter's Hill, you know, public-private partnership. If we wanted to go into that, that's really a decision that the subcommittee can make a recommendation on to the full commission. And then we have, you know, Rest Haven and City Cemeteries. We have the two interpretive stops at the park at Harlansdale Farm. And you guys may need to help refresh my memory on what those are. It's been a while since I've listened to those two. I think one's a little bit more about Civil War history and the other's more Midnight Sun. Is that correct?
This is Sam Gant. I would like to have the cemetery one. I very much like to work on that one.
Okay, Rest Haven and City Cemeteries.
Yes.
Okay, that stops number 4 and 5.
Okay. Okay. And I'd be willing to work with some of the others. I don't have any specific ones other ones that I would like.
Right now we have Fort Granger and Roper's Knob as one stop. Now we could consider separating those. We do have 2 extra slots in addition to the Masonic Hall, which we've already kind of made a decision to recommend as its own stop because it's not on here.
I'd be glad to work on Fort Granger.
Okay.
And I'll look at Roper's Knob. I'm not as familiar with it.
Yeah, I would recommend listening to stop number 8 and seeing how you feel about the content, you know, and
Okay.
the problem with Roper's Knob right now is that we don't have a great access point within the city for folks to visit it. And I believe it was probably added to Fort Granger because you can reference it from Fort Granger and give people a bit of a sense of the relationship between the two in relation to the Civil War battle. But it's just not one that is easily accessible to the public. Now that might change, but as of right now, I'm not sure if we had a standalone one, where we would put it. Unless we were to put it at that wayside over there where the silver marker is for it off of MacHatcher. And I can show you guys where that is if you'd like. But the city did put up a silver sign at the kind of the wayside rest stop on MacHatcher near Roper's Knob.
Would you mind repeating the number for Fort Granger and Roper's Knob?
Sure, that's number 8.
Right. And for the cemeteries?
That's number 4 for Rest Haven, number 5 for City.
Okay.
And I will send you all the brochure again.
Eric's not here, but maybe we could give him 1 and 3. I mean, I don't even know who's worked on all of these before, so you probably have more information than I do on that.
Oh, well, yeah, we'll definitely need to get him involved with number 3 for sure. Number 3 for sure. We also have, on the rest of the list, we have Collins Farm, 2 stops for Eastern Flank Battle Park. And I do think we need to work on our, what we're calling things. I think we call it Battlefield Park now. To Toussaint Overtures, the next 2 stops, the Macklemore House. And I would love to get Alma's thoughts on whether or not that is where you'd like to see it, or if you feel like that needs to be changed. Perhaps the Battle of Franklin Trust can work with us on that one to update it if you feel like it needs to be updated. And then Hard Bargain Neighborhood is number 15. We had mentioned in the past, and this would need to be something that we would vet with the community, obviously, that another potential stop could be the Natchez neighborhood. But I would definitely want to get some feedback from the neighborhood itself as to whether or not it would like to include a stop there.
Can you give us a list of the ones that we said we were going to add? Because I know we've talked about several. I know one was the Masonic Hall, and what were the others that we were adding?
Well, we only have 2 more stops available to add, so we need to choose those. And I would like to get some feedback today on what those might be. So
Well, I know.
So
I think Masonic Hall should definitely be one.
right. So we have 2 more in addition to that. There had been conversations about the Natchez Street neighborhood because there is Hardbark neighborhood as a stop right now. There had been conversations about having Roper's Knob as its own stop as opposed to having it paired with Fort Granger. But as I had explained a few minutes ago, there are some potential issues with that because I don't know where we'd exactly put it. We also talked about having a stop that might be more specific to women's history. I'm not sure where that would go. We could talk about options for that. Options for other cultural history, like either a Native American history or archaeological history as related to Native American history.
I think the one we might have talked about was just mentioning all the historic churches in town. I would think probably at the corner of 5 Points, even the churches, St. Paul, Presbyterian, Natchez, you could probably mention 4 or 5 pretty significant churches that were established.
Oh, there's several right there. That's a good point.
And to Scott's point, I do like that idea. I think we could focus on some of the churches, particularly there at 5 Points. They were all hospitals. So if we're looking at keeping it Civil War or Battle of Franklin centric, that would be quite appropriate. And you can even, it would be appropriate to consider the hospitals, and we could tie women's history into that as well.
Absolutely. That's a really good point because I would like to see more women's history tied into the audio tour, and that's an excellent way to do it. There were about 40 hospital sites just in downtown Franklin area, and all the historic churches that we have right now were hospitals. So very good recommendation. So does anyone else have a recommendation on something we hadn't talked about yet?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Pam. If the community of Natchez is open to it, we do have that sign that we erected for the Green Book, and that would also tie in Reconstruction and civil rights, and then of course that's women's history there because it was a female-owned boarding house. It could be a little bit of a sidebar there if you all are interested in that at all.
Okay, that's a good point. Be a good hosting site.
Yeah, you mentioned the Natchez neighborhood earlier, and I feel like that's one. And we've only got a choice. We've only got 2 spots, but I feel like that's a really important one because after the Civil War, the Carter family were at the Carter House, and they lived around in the neighborhood after the Civil War, and they're still there now. And they were on the Natchez. They were on Natchez Street. They were in the Natchez neighborhood. Some of the families are still descendants are still there now. Then you've got the First Baptist Church, one of the oldest churches in Williamson County, in Franklin, African American churches. You've got Charter Chapel, and it's got a story itself. And there's so much on Natchez. And then, as Pam mentioned, the Gaylor House, and things are rapidly changing. So I think it's so important. Then you've got the school, the school that was there that is now a Claiborne and Hughes. That was a African American school, originally Franklin Training School. It became Natchez. So you've got a lot of history on Natchez. And then you've got Fred Williams. He was the grandson of A.N.C. Williams, and A.N.C. Williams was, a free man in 1860s and had owned property downtown Franklin. So it's a lot of stuff behind, and like I said, all of this may not be able to be told at the stops, but it can be part of the information, context that we can put on a website?
Can
know it
I
sounds
ask
like a lot of work.
Can I ask a quick question? Why are we limited to stops? Like you said, there's only 2 stops.
Right now, that's all we have available left on the Guide by Cell tour. We would have to amend our plan in order to do it. That's a possibility. This subcommittee can make a recommendation to the full commission and make a recommendation to BOMA to expand our Guide by Cell tour to add more stops. I was just working within the framework of what we have.
All I'm saying is we have no shortage of history, and I do think, especially with sort of the consciousness raising that's going on right now, and the Fuller story and the interpretive tours that Eric's doing, and that of course Rachel is doing at the Masonic Hall. I think there's a lot of interest, and will continue to be more interest in Black history, and we need to showcase it along with women's history. We're going through the sesquicentennial centennial, of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. So I just think that as we become more enlightened as people, there's going to be more interest in our community, and people are going to have other things that they're interested in besides just Civil War. They might be interested in Native American history or Reconstruction or civil rights, and I feel like we have lots of layers of history in this little town.
Absolutely.
I agree entirely with that. But I think that if we do so, we need to divide the tours and give in such a way so that they have a choice. If they wish to take a short tour or a Civil War tour, that they can take a certain route. If they want to take a longer tour, they can do that. Because I think if we overwhelm them with a number of tours, number of sites, I think they'll will not take full advantage of it.
I agree with Sam. I mean, we could even divide it up with, here's 1800s, then here's, that we could easily divide it up with a history timeline, so to speak. And actually, the first part of the history would be Native American, if we want to go there.
That sounds
Just
good.
Throwing it out as an idea.
I agree with you all. I do think this is a really incredible tool to use. I do think that the most important thing to do right now is to improve what we have and really market it and add on while that is hot and successful, in order to help promote it and really show the viability of it. Right now, it's really stagnant. Our numbers have decreased a lot because we haven't updated it in a while, but the numbers are steady enough to show that there's still interest in using this tool. So it's not one we want to scrap by any means. I do think
I agree.
We really need to, we haven't really updated it and promoted it in 6 years.
Well, that is manageable now. Expanding it will be something we need to do in the future.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking while we're doing it, let's throw a big net, and we're not going to need. Chances are, once we update this, we're not going to be updating it another year or two. This will sit for a while. So, I agree with what everybody's saying, but I'm just saying let's look big picture.
I agree with what Pam just mentioned. This is Rachel. We should try to cast a big net. I think we're all, I think, on the same sheet of music when it comes to offering the variety and the diversity within the history here in Franklin. There's no doubt about that. I also think, to Amanda's point, we should consider really updating it and marketing it well, but also at the same time, perhaps, as a subcommittee, make a resolution to our commission, who can then make a resolution, a recommendation to BOMA to help us expand the tour. And then through that, we could then offer a variety, to Sam's point, of this is a Civil War tour, and then this is a Franklin history tour. Maybe there's a way to segment that into two separate things. That way, if people wanted to learn more about just the history of Franklin, they have that opportunity. And if they're very interested in the Civil War, then they could do that. And I know that that's a lot of work. But I think we're creating some very good ideas from this, and I'd like to see us build upon it. To add in the Native American history, though, to to Amanda's point, I think we can't leave that out. And when we're looking at the Natchez District, we have the footprint there within the landscape of the original old trace that did come through Franklin. That was originally Chickasaw land. So there would be perhaps a way for us to put a few sentences in the beginning of the tour that would talk about that. And then you could even have it as almost like an enslavement to freedom from, that the slave coffles did walk down the old trace at one point. But then the war came, and then there was emancipation, and there's freedom, and then there's the triumph through the 13th Amendment. And I think there's a way to tie that into the Natchez District. Those are just my thoughts, but I think that might be one way to get Native American history. And I know on the Masonic tour, I'm going to put that in there as well, because that's why it's landmark.
Well, can I make one suggestion, just in keeping with what we're talking about? Could we maybe vote today, or let me make a recommendation that we start the process on the amendment, because I know it takes a while to get to BOMA, so at least that it's in the hopper, and we're not talking about this 6 months from now trying to get something pushed forward. And also with regards to the overview of Franklin history, I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. I suspect that it's being taught in the school system, an overview of Franklin history already. Why can't we take a playbook from what's being taught in high school or junior high or whatever grade they introduced Franklin history? I don't know what grade it would be, but and basically it would be Franklin 101 for a visitor or for anyone who wants to take the tour. Paraphrase what's already being taught. So that we don't have to then.
We asked Tim, but I bet you there is no Franklin 101 being taught in our schools.
That's what I was going to say. Where did that come from? I don't think that exists.
I was going to say
Well,
the biggest
I
challenge.
am barren, so I don't know. I'm just thinking, I would think they would be teaching something about Tennessee history, and Franklin's part of it, but maybe there isn't. I don't know.
Nope.
So they do get Tennessee history, Pam, but the local history is something that I know, at least from the public school perspective, that they are really challenging teachers to incorporate into their curriculum.
So
Gotcha.
to answer Pam's question, this subcommittee can't vote, but we can ask the full commission next time it meets to consider a vote.
Put it on the agenda.
But what I would ask you to consider is that we don't have anything to ask them to vote on quite yet. We would want them to have a list of things that we want to add. So just keep that in mind. Our budget's really not one that is super flexible right now. So if we were to go to BOMA, we would want it to be very well laid out and what the request is.
And this is Kelly. This sounds like the great start of a strategic plan to
Right.
expand.
Yeah.
But due to our budget constraints and where we are right now, we've pulled back so much for the rest of the fiscal year. All of our program enhancements were removed from the budget going forward because we just don't know the full extent of the impacts from COVID on our budgeting. So it may be good to think about to really focus on what we do have right now, and then the next phase is expansion once you get through updating what we have today.
And like to speak to kind of what I said before, like showcase, hey, we took this, we have revitalized it. Look how well it's doing. We want to, play off that momentum by adding this, and this. And what we've already, looked at all the ways that these 5, 6, 7 additional stops could be beneficial to our community. And here's why. Just have a really strategic plan laid out. And I mean, who could say no to that?
And I'm not
I agree,
advocating
Amanda.
spending money. It's whatever we can do where it's not committing BOMA to any money. There's
Well,
things that we can do that.
Unfortunately, that's kind of what I'm doing right now, is working with the confines of the guide by cell that we already have the plan for. If we were to add additional stops beyond what we have the capability for at the moment, we would have to update the plan to one that would cost more. And every time we add a stop, that's a sign that we need to install at the stop. So that is cost for each location plus cost to manage the program for each stop.
So we'll just have to update what we have now then, is what your recommendation is, and then we'll just have to wait and see what our economy and what the budget is gonna do. I mean, it's gonna be a while before.
And I think we can get 2 extra stops. The 2 additional signs, I think we can make that work.
Mhm.
It's just when we're adding, 10 additional stops, that might push our guide by cell capacity a lot higher than, we might think it would. So,
Hey, Amanda.
packaging.
Amanda, not to belabor a point, but I would be curious what the cost would be for additional stops, because it might be an opportunity to fundraise for that. If there's a way that we could cost out how much it would cost to add one, however many stops, and there may be some underwriting that would happen for that.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Certainly. All right, well, let's get back to the tour. Does anyone have interest in volunteering to look at the overview of the Battle of Franklin?
I would look at that.
I'll look at the overview. You can send that to me.
Okay, Sam Hoffman, number 1. All right, Winstead Hill. Who is the Winstead Hill guru?
I'm not sure we have a guru, but I'll take a look at it.
What number is that?
Number 2. I can certainly try to talk to Eric Jacobson and Thomas Cartwright on a couple of these too, if you guys feel that they might be especially equipped to look at those.
Whatever we do, I think those 2 guys are going to have to kind of take a look at it. Maybe not major decisions, but just to make sure we're not saying silly things.
Okay, I might contact Eric and Thomas on number 3, which is the Salt of the Cotton Gin site.
And I'm willing to take a look at that one, Amanda.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think the thing we want to avoid, because that's a classic telling of the story, is that sometimes they get all involved in the organizational structure. And they say it was so-and-so of the 157th Regiment of the 3rd Brigade of the Division and Corps and all that. And when you start talking that way, people's eyes glass over. It just loses them. So we just have to keep that type of material out, or at least minimize it, I think, because we become our own worst enemy sometimes when we tell too many details of the story.
Sure.
I think, Amanda, perhaps that would be an opportunity to, maybe there's a way on the audio tour for the assault on the Cotton Gin or the Eastern Flank, if they wanted more information, to go to the Battle of Franklin Trust website. If they wanted a deeper dive into the battlefield itself or the history of the battle itself, perhaps that's where we could do exactly what we were recommending with Toussaint and Macklemore, where we could then encourage people to go to the Battle of Franklin or Trust, and perhaps go take a tour at Carter House or take a tour at Carnton. That's just a thought, because to Sam's point, we have to think that everybody who is listening to the audio is not a Civil War guru. And some people go, I just wanted to really know why this place was important. I didn't want to know like every general and captain and private's name. And
right.
And then we could, so we don't want people to lose interest. Just say, hey, at the end of this tour, stay tuned for how you can learn more, or something.
Absolutely.
I love that idea. By the way, I'll look at Winstead too if you all want to send me Winstead. This is Pam.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember Winstead, and I think Winstead, Hill, and the overview was recorded by Thomas Flagel. So he may have written the information. I don't know. But I think, Pam, you're a great person to listen to Winstead because your house sits right behind it.
Hello?
Can you
Yes,
hear
we're
him?
here.
Just cut out, sorry.
Oh, I was saying that, Pam, you should listen to Winstead. That's a great idea because since your house sits right behind it, if they don't mention Harrison House, then perhaps we could figure out how to include that.
Well, and to your point, even though it's not open, I mean, there's a really interesting history about the house that then people actually can see it and go, oh, wow, I could imagine that this was a spy headquarters, this was Hood's command post, that kind of thing. It becomes, I'm so glad you said that, Sam Huffman, about people's eyes glazing over, because I don't dislike military history, but I think you can get into it too deeply. And I think that if you're interested, my God, take the tour at Carter House in Carrington and go to the library, go to the bookstore and buy. There's a plethora of books if you want to really dive into Hood or whoever you're particularly interested in. We don't have to be all things to all people, basically. I think we're here to give an overview.
All right. Well,
Hello?
is anyone interested in, I've got Macklemore House, and I'm going to send it to Alma, and I'm going to send it to Eric. Does anyone else want to look at Macklemore House? Okay. Does anyone want to look at Hard Bargain?
I'll look at Hard Bargain.
Okay. Now, we had mentioned, and I know I keep bringing us up, and maybe we can't choose those today, but I would like to kind of get a good sense of where we're going on the additional stops. If we were to add the two, in addition to the selected Masonic Hall. Sounds like there's interest in the Natchez Street neighborhood and the historic churches. Is that kind of where I'm feeling everyone going?
I would agree with that. Right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
I would agree.
Okay, great. Okay. Is there anyone with particular interest in kind of starting some research on those?
On the church.
Pam, we're going to mute you for a second because there's a lot of noise there. Okay.
Sorry, driving.
That's okay.
I'm willing to start on the churches, Amanda.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm. I can't start right now on Natchez, but I could probably maybe recruit some people. Because that's going to be pretty detailed. I mean, if we haven't got approval to add anything right now, but and I can't actually start working on it. Not at this point. Not at this time. I've got a couple of other things that I'm having to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't, even though I think it's a wonderful stop that's going to generate a lot of good information. But I can't personally commit to work on it, not at this moment.
Well, that's certainly fine. Okay.
But I would be willing to help when, a little later, because we're not going to be able to do it to add them right now anyway, right? But I know you want to go ahead and it takes time to get assimilate all the information. And so I know we need to go ahead and get started, but like I said, I can't start right now, and I wouldn't be able to give you a report on anything within the next few months because I'm just tied up.
That's okay. That's okay. We don't have to have anything available anytime soon. I just kind of wanted to get a sense of where we're going on that. So
I will be able to help with that. And then there are people who will have a lot of history and information that will know about the Natchez area that, we can recruit.
Okay, well, we can give, if we give a BOMA update here this year, that's something we can give them a sense of what we're working towards. So that's kind of what I was looking for. So that's great. Okay. And I think there's a lot of us that can help with that. Yeah. I know Kelly Gibson had mentioned some interest in that too. I don't want to speak for her. She's right here, but
no, I was actually just about to speak up. Hi, how are you? How's everyone? Hi. I'd be happy to work on Natchez
Okay,
in the
good.
next couple months. We can certainly meet and talk about it further, but yeah, I'm happy to work on that one.
And I'm happy to help in any way I can too. I obviously can't take a full lead on it, but I guess I've got a lot of things in the air like Alma does, but I'm happy to help in any way I can. So I feel like it's a very important one as well. And I'm really glad to hear everyone else is interested in moving that direction.
I'm always happy to pitch in. Kelly, I'll be willing to help you over the next few months as well.
Okay, sounds great.
All right. So I don't know if we have a lot more to talk about today. I know that a couple of you need to kind of drop off at 9. Does anyone else have anything else you want to talk about before we head on?
Do we have any update on the trench line markers?
We are going to be speaking with Rachel here this week about moving forward with setting up a subcommittee meeting to talk about you guys meeting to talk about that. So that's moving forward.
I have a photograph of the proposed trench line marker that I'd be glad to show you.
I do have the one you sent me. We can't really talk about that with this meeting because it's not on our agenda. But I will be setting up a federal line marker subcommittee meeting here very soon. It won't be next week, but the soonest it'll be is the week after that, just because of our Open Meetings Act requirements. But we will have one fairly soon. It may be in person. It may not be virtual, just depending on what the governor allows the city to do as far as that goes. We just have to wait to hear that out. So I will definitely keep everyone in the loop as we work toward that. But we do have one tentatively moving forward. So I look forward to meeting with you all as soon as we can get that scheduled. Yes. All right, anything else?
No, I've got to run, but good meeting. Thanks for everyone. So if I'm not on the vote to adjourn, I'm abstaining.
Second. We don't vote, but second.
You gotta keep us here forever because we're not gonna have a quorum to leave.
Yeah, so don't do that to us.
All right,
We adjourn.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.
But wait, we have to vote. So Sam Huffman entertained a motion to adjourn. Who seconds?
I'll second.
Miss Alma seconds. All right, so I'm gonna go down the roll call really quickly. Sam Gant,
Adjourn.
Sam Huffman,
Yes.
Pam Lewis. Did Pam drop off or is she there?
she dropped off.
Okay. Alma McLemore.
Yes.
Is Scott Speedy still here?
Yes.
Thank you. And Rachel Finch, yes. All right, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.